My name is Simon Oliver, and my vocation really was very unexpected. Certainly my work as an academic theologian was completely unexpected and unfolded over many years. I do remember when I was about 16 or 17 having this overwhelming sense one day that God was wanting me to work in some way within his church. And I had to be quite patient with that sense. I had to listen for that call within the church as well, coming through the people with whom I worshipped on a day-to-day and week-by-week basis. I had to try and discern it with my parish priest and discern it quite critically. Through the parish, the question started to be asked, have you considered ordained ministry? And I considered all kinds of professions as I was in my teens. My dad was always saying to me, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do with your life? And I decided that I would go away to university and do a subject that was not theological. I wanted to put off doing theology until later. I wanted to get a broader education, if you like. I decided to have a little bit of time out, so I went to teach in a mission school in what was then Zaire, what's now the Democratic Republic of the Congo, for a year, having been to what's now called a Bishop's Advisory Panel. And I was conditionally recommended to go forward for training. I had to wait another year after getting back from Africa. That year was a year of real blessing and grace because I went to live in Leeds. I had a completely different kind of job working for a property company, but I met the woman who is now my wife. So that all worked out quite well. And then I entered training for ordination. And I really was firmly convinced at that stage that I would go to theological college, I would do my 3 years, I would enjoy doing the theology degree, and I would then be ordained and be a parish priest for the rest of my life. Things did not work out in quite that way. I took to academic theology far more than I expected to. It turned out I had a bit of a knack for it, and when I finished the degree I was encouraged very, very strongly by the people who taught me to do a PhD. So I had to go back to my wife and say, would you mind doing another 3 years in Cambridge? And thankfully she agreed. So I had 3 more wonderful years doing academic research, some of the happiest years of my life. But I also did a non-stipendiary curacy at the same time. So what I didn't do was delay ordination. I felt that my primary vocation was to priestly ministry, to be a priest for God's people in his church. And that has never wavered. And that is still my fundamental calling. I went to be a college chaplain in Oxford, but at the same time I had other ministerial experiences. So I spent a while as the acting chaplain to Helen House and Douglas House, which are hospices and respite centres for children with life-limiting illness. And I learnt a huge amount about ministry and the gospel while I was working in that very different kind of environment. I then went to work in the University of Wales, and I really then developed more clearly my vocation to writing and teaching. And I thought, well, I'll carry on being an academic theologian, but always active in parish ministry as a preaching priest, one who will preside at the Eucharist very regularly, and I've always maintained that, combining the dual vocations, if you like. I thought I'll carry on being an academic theologian until someone tells me to stop. No one has yet told me to stop, so I've carried on. I am one of the canons at Durham Cathedral, so I'm one of the priests that helps to run the cathedral on a day-to-day basis. But my main job is as Professor of Theology in Durham University, where I'm involved in a lot of theological research and teaching a lot of students at undergraduate and postgraduate level, and I also do quite a lot of work as a theologian within the Church of England. But I think that my sense of vocation to priestly ministry still begins and ends at the altar, So I've always had a very strong sense of grounding my ministry in Jesus' call to Peter, feed my sheep, tend my flock, feed my sheep, that we find towards the end of St. John's Gospel. That what I'm trying to do is something distinctive in feeding the people of God, firstly with the sacraments of the Church, and particularly with the Eucharist, at the altar every day, feeding them for mission out in the world. So sending God's people out into the world with the things that God gives us to nourish us, but feeding them also with understanding the Christian tradition through theology, through learning, through reading, and through teaching my students. I learned so much from teaching my students, and that I try and pass on in what I do in the cathedral as well, in preaching ministry and teaching ministry there.